Good morning, everyone. Buenos días a todos. Thank you for joining today. My name is Priscilla Garza, and I'm a global finance consultant at IBM. I graduated from Southern Methodist University with a degree in finance in 2019 and am a proud Latina with Mexican roots. I see we have some of you in the chat today joining from New Jersey, New York, Texas. Welcome, and to everyone else, welcome as well. Thanks for joining us. And thank you to the speakers for taking time to share their thoughts on this topic of social branding. I'm joined by Laura Gajardo, Caroline Carter, Gabby Natale, and Diego Rivera. Laura Gajardo helps lead external communications and media relations effort that align with IBM's strategic markets. She engages with local, regional, and Hispanic media to bring IBM's story to life. In her spare time, she enjoys connecting and mentoring prospective MBA Latino students. Laura is part of the Hispanic Executive Council of Hispanics at IBM, where she helps bring awareness to the business resource groups and is its initiative through strategic communication campaigns. After working in journalism for 6 years, Laura transitioned to corporate communication. She's worked in journalism, live TV and news, legal services, and healthcare. Laura was born and raised in Houston and is a first-generation Mexican-American, a strong believer in education as a societal equalizer, so much so that she's recently earned her MBA from the University of Texas at Austin. We also have Caroline Carter here with us today. She leads IBM's global payroll operations, delivering payroll to 87 countries. She's over 20 years of HR operations and HR technology experience in multinational organizations, developing human resources, strategies, executive transformations, and managing operations. She has a passion for co-creating innovative solutions that deliver delightful employee experiences and zero-touch payroll operations. Carolyn is grateful for the opportunity she was afforded as a proud Hispanic American. As an active member of IBM's Hispanic Executive Council and an active advocate for underserved communities, she feels that it is both an honor and a responsibility to pay those opportunities forward here today. And next we have Gabby Natale, as the first Latina to win 3-time Emmys back-to-back, a host and executive producer of her own show, the first Hispanic author to be published by HarperCollins Leadership Division, and one of the few foreign-born writers to narrate their own audiobook in English. Gabby has had her own share of being the first like her in leadership spaces. Gabby has shared her inspirational message in Fortune 50 corporations, the United Nations, and in her own TEDx talk. Gabby's experiences have led her to combine her passion for media and entrepreneurial spirit. Gabby holds a bachelor in international relations and has a master's degree in journalism from the University of San Andres and Columbia University. Prior to starting her career in television, Gabby taught communications and journalism courses at University of Texas. And finally, we're also joined by Diego Rivera. Diego started his career at Nike Global Headquarters in 2016 and has been leading performance product creation as a global design director since. In addition to his role as design director, Diego serves as a co-chair of Nike's Latino and Friend Network, leading 1,500 member employee resource group, representing Nike's Latinx community. Diego was born in Quito, Ecuador, and moved to Miami, Florida with his family at age 16. In college, Diego studied branding and design, and since then, Diego has worked as an art and creative director in a variety of fields, including entertainment, digital, advertising, fashion, and apparel. To name a few: Sony, Johnson & Johnson, AT&T, Warner Music, Hilton Hotels, and many more. While working as a full-time creative director, Diego also serves as a design professor at Miami Ad School, founded a nonprofit organization focusing on education and arts development, and worked as an independent design director for clients like Univision, Latin Grammys, Carmelo Anthony, MTV, and Ray Network, and Anheuser-Busch. As you've heard, these incredible professionals have a diverse and prestigious background, but one thing they all share are their Latino roots. Today, we'll learn about the importance of creating your social brand and why the time is now to do so. If you haven't started, don't worry. We've got actionable takeaways coming your way to kickstart your brand. But let's start with step one, understanding what is a personal brand right now in 2022. Gabby, we'll start with you and we'll kick it off to Carolyn, Laura, then Diego.
Perfect. So first of all, hola IBM, hola Hispanic Star. I'm so happy to be here with you today to speak about this topic. So the official definition of personal brand is something like a deliberate intent to communicate and present your value to the world. That would be the official definition. Now, for me, the best example of how personal branding works is in a movie that it's called The Insider. And in that movie with Al Pacino in The Insider, there's a journalist that works in 60 Minutes that is doing a hardcore investigative work. And he said something that really summarizes how I feel about personal branding. And that is, he said, my name is, and he said the name of the character, so let's pretend the name of the character is John Smith. He says, my name is John Smith from 60 Minutes. If I take away the last part of that sentence, nobody returns my calls. The idea behind personal branding is that everyone can have a chance to return your call, even if you don't say the whole thing. So the idea that you have presented your value in a way that if your title changes, if the company you're working for changes, if you become self-employed, everybody is going to return your call, or the key people are going to return your call because you did the work necessary to present what your value is for the world. And sometimes I know it's hard for people to start seeing themselves as somebody who has a personal brand, who is becoming more visible, and they are scared because once you put yourself a little bit more out there, there's more people looking, and sometimes that's a pain point for many people, the feeling of maybe they're going to be judged, maybe they're going to be seen. But if that's you, what I want to tell you is the real pain point is not that you're going to be put out there. The real pain point is all the opportunities that are not going to come your way just because people don't know about you or your work. That's the real pain point. And coming from a Latino background, where we know in a professional setup, there's many times bias, personal branding is an unmatched opportunity to own the narrative and teach people how you want to be seen, shape the perception of who you are as a professional and as the value you can bring to the table.
Thank you. Let's kick it over to Carolyn. Why don't you give us your thoughts?
Thank you, Priscilla, and thank you for including me in this conversation. And Gabby, that was really interesting perspective. Thank you for that. You talk a little bit about your personal narrative, and when I think about personal brand, my personal narrative has kind of changed over time. So when I graduated from college, I was actually the first in my family to graduate with a college degree, the first in my family to join corporate America. My father is a retired auto mechanic. My mom is a retired nurse's aide. I could not go to them for help and guidance on how to navigate corporate America, on how I should behave and act in the workplace. So I created my narrative, which was, what I thought a perfect, professional persona should be in the workplace. And so I didn't really bring my whole self to the workplace. I brought who I thought this professional character should be. And I do think in the beginning of my career, it kind of held me back a little bit because it prevented me from building and developing authentic relationships. And so now when I think about personal narrative and how my career has changed over time, I really bring my whole self. It's not just about, my skills and my professional background. It's about who I am as a person, who I believe in, the fact that family is, number one in my life, sharing my personal experiences and my point of view and who I am as a person to the workplace. And you know, when I think about social media now, not only do I bring that to the workplace, but I'm also more intentional about bringing my whole authentic self to social media. And that's new for me. To be honest, when I thought about LinkedIn, or when I think about LinkedIn, I thought about it as a place where I can, you know, look for a job or, you know, recruit talent, but it's really much more than that. It's a place where I can share myself, where I can connect with others that I might not have been able to connect with before. So, I mean, the short answer is personal brand for me is really about bringing my whole authentic self, what I'm passionate about, what drives me, and connecting with others that, you know, might have like interests.
Wonderful. I love that. Yeah, it's about understanding who you are and not what thinking others think is valuable. It's about what you bring to the table. Exactly. Laura, why don't we move on next to you, and you can tell us a little bit more about this as well.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I relate so much to what Carolyn just shared. I think my personal brand, when I started my career 14 years ago, has also evolved quite a bit, and I'm more outspoken and open, and I embrace it a lot more now that I'm, you know, several years into my career. For me, my personal brand is about highlighting all the characteristics that made me who I am, who have shaped my values of who I am today. And these are characteristics that I used to hide a little more in the beginning of my career. And for me, that is that I'm a woman, first generation American, and now I'm a mother. Previously, I used to, you know, just not share as much about them. But the truth is, that is what has shaped who I am as a person, my values, what I value at this point in my life. So I used to see them as barriers in achieving my goals. Now I see them as almost a badge of honor. I've been able to get ahead in my career despite being a woman in the workplace and being a first generation American. And now I'm a mother who, you know, balances, you know, work-life balance and tries to set an example for my young children, and using that to my advantage, and bringing all of that also to the workplace. Being able to talk about these various facets of my background openly, freely, digitally, in the workplace with colleagues and peers is what personal brand is to me.
Yeah, there's a variety of things to consider in a person, from their experience to their current environment or their situation. So thank you so much, Laura. Diego, why don't you finish us off here with some thoughts as well?
Absolutely. Thank you. And buenos dias a todos. Good morning. It's hard to follow up on all the amazing things my fellow panelists have shared. But in my opinion, from my perspective, when most of us know, or we've heard, that a brand is not a company, a campaign, or a product. We know that a brand is an experience, a connection, and a bond that you create with your consumers or your followers in this aspect. And that bond is created through trust, through honesty, and through authenticity. And if that applies to organizations and companies and corporations out there, then it definitely has to apply to us, right? The same principles have to apply to how we communicate. And our personal brand is that. It's our voice, it's our persona, it's how we seen or heard out there by people that may or may not know us. We've heard this before. We want to make sure that voice represents who we are, even when we're not in that room, even though we may not be present. So if you think also about how the world is digitally connected now, your own brand is one of those very few things that we own and that we can truly control. It's one of those things that we need to value and understand how powerful it is. And it is on us, and it's important for us to not only know what personal brand is, but also how that could work for us, how powerful it is, and how that can create connections for us, how that can open doors for us, and how we can create that experience for people around us. Once we unlock that, and once we understand that, the rest is just easy, becomes part of like our second nature, part of who we are.
Yes, it's not a tactical approach. It simply is just who we are. I love that, Diego. So I want to touch back on something that Gabby spoke on earlier about just bringing value and communicating. So actually, Diego and Laura, I'm going to gear this question to you. What is the value? Like, why should we consider launching our personal brand in the first place?
I think, I think the traditional ways of advancing in our career, 20, 30 years ago, of just applying and you stay in an organization, you become a lifer, or you jump just by applying to jobs and everything works out, like, it has evolved quite a bit from what it was, career progression was, years ago. I think networking is a big part now of being able to progress in your career, knowing the right people in your network, having connections in the industry or the organizations that you aspire to be. And I think part of that includes having your personal brand. What makes you, and what is it about you that could be a good fit for an organization? As a lot of companies and organizations move to adapt, I think, a culture and are more vocal about their values, you as a candidate or as a professional need to assess whether the company or that you aspire to be part of, if their values connect to yours. But I feel like you really don't know that unless you have a personal brand, unless you know what you're passionate about, what makes you wake up in the morning and give it your best. And a personal brand helps you elude those values and be vocal about it. So I think it's important because ultimately that is part of what helps you be you and helps you be a more competitive candidate as you move throughout your career or move throughout your organization, move up through the ranks. I think it's important. It's an important part, just as your technical skills, your networking, your interview skills. I think your personal branding equals carry weight to a lot of those things when it comes to moving within your career.
Absolutely. And we've seen a shift almost in corporate America in wanting to meet the desires and the demands that the workforce is wanting. And if we can communicate that with our desires and our personal brand, then we can nurture an environment that also nurtures our careers as well. Diego, so why should we consider launching our personal brand?
Well, to follow up a little on my previous response, it comes back to being authentic. In a world where things that we see online right now are fabricated or calculated or fake, it's important for us to stand out by being authentic, by being our true selves, by being sort of sagging when everyone zigs. It's our voice, and this shouldn't feel like work. This shouldn't feel like a task. This shouldn't feel like you have to create that extra persona or like that perfect version of you to attract people. Because at the end of the day, like Laura said, who are you attracting, right? By creating that persona. So I'll tell you, in my world, I meet a lot of people. I interview people. People reach out and send portfolios and resumes and things like that. And yes, well, it's great to see what you do, what you've done, where you've been, and the skills you bring to the table. With proper timing and in a way, those things could be taught. Those things could be developed. What makes you you, what your story is, your passion, what drives you is what truly makes you unique and makes you stand out. So not only for the company that's looking to bring in employees to know what drives you, what moves you, and what you're about, but most importantly for you, it's important for you to know and to launch this brand so that you know and you sort of like craft the path of where you want to go, who you want to connect with, and how you want to use your brand. Once you get those three done, then this wouldn't feel like extra work. It's an extension of who you are, and it allows you to find the perfect job, the perfect group, or the perfect network for yourself. If you think that's in a personal level, that's what I try to do on a daily basis. I try to be as honest, as vocal, as 100% authentic me. There's no on and off line Diego. It's the one Diego that gives you 100% regardless of where we are. And it does make a difference. It does make a difference because when employers, when networkers, when people reach out, they know what to expect because they already seen my brand. They've already experienced that bond that I created, even though we've never connected before.
And now that's a really important point that you made about authenticity and your brand and who you are. And I want to dive deeper into that actually and pass it on to Gabby and Carolyn. Can you just, it's no secret that all of us here, we're Latinos and we're proud Latinos. And so I want to touch base on that as well. Based on your authenticity and who you are and your Latinidad, can you describe what your Latinidad is to those joining here today?
So for me, my Latinidad is, of course, shaped by my identity, by my experiences, by the fact that I am an immigrant, that I am from Argentina, that I lived the first 23 years of my life in Argentina, which is a beautiful country, but it's also a country with a lot of, ups and downs. There's volatility, and that shapes also your perception of the world. And then the fact that, something like growing up and at some point having 5 presidents in 10 days, graduating with a master's degree only to find out there's 20% unemployment, or being a teenager at the supermarket and seeing, there's a hyperinflation of 5,000%. So those things shape who you are. It's the culture, it's the environment, and then taking a decision, which was a bold move, to take a plane on my own to a new country, new language, where I had no friends and family, to start over and learn that I was not only just an Argentina, I was a Latina. So there's a new layer there. I'm an Argentina. And the thing is, my Latinidad is shaped by all those experiences. And in the beginning, it's such a big adjustment, because when you come from an environment where there's so much instability, so let's say there's an opportunity, what you tend to do is hold on to this opportunity because you don't know when a new opportunity is going to come. And I took a plane, and what they don't tell you is that you travel inside the plane, but your mindset from the old place travels with you. So it took me 4 years for me to embrace this new mindset, a new layer of Latinidad, which meant seeing the world from a place of possibilities, because I was in a new place and there were lots of possibilities here. And so that, I think, it's part of all the layers that you have as a Latino. Some of us are immigrants, some are first generations, some, I live in Texas. Some of them, they tell me, I didn't cross the border crossed me, because me and my family, we have been here for so many times, for so many generations. So I think all those layers are the ones that make me who I am, and I bring who I am to what I do.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Gabby. Carolyn, would you like to share as well?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything that Gabby just said, and just following up and continuing the theme on authenticity. When I think about myself these days, I really put myself out there, and that's at the workplace now. That's when I'm interviewing for jobs. I think, and this came later to me in my career. When you're interviewing, whether it's an internal job or an external job, I really answer questions with my honest point of view. And I try and interview my employer, potential employer, as much as they're interviewing me, because it's important for me that the place that I'm going to next, the next role that I'm going to, is going to be a good fit for me as well. So if I'm feeling passionate, I let it happen. I bring my authenticity, I bring my point of view, I bring emotional intelligence, which I actually feel as a Hispanic culture is one of our strengths, is our ability to, have emotional intelligence. It's the fact that family and our culture means so much to us, and we bring that to the table. I think it's actually very much a strength now, given everything that we're all living through with the pandemic and the emotions of, that everyone's feeling right now with the war in the Ukraine. So I look at it actually as a strength for us as a culture. When I think about my Latinidad, I think about passion, I think about my family values, I think about authenticity, I think about giving back to our Hispanic community, which I know my fellow panelists are passionate about. I think that kind of sums it up for me. And again, it's just continuing that theme of being authentic, being ourselves, bringing ourselves, because we as a culture have so much to offer. And I think if we bring that, we're really going to be seen, and that's exciting to me.
Absolutely, Carolyn. And I guess to continue on that, to Carolyn and Diego, do you find, how does your company foster that community of Latinidad or your authentic self, and even to other communities as well? How is your company doing so? Carolyn, we'll start with you and then we'll pass it over to Diego.
I have to say, I'm really proud of the work that IBM is doing. I mean, we have the Hispanic Executive Council, and Lauda and I both sit on the Executive Council. We have BRGs that kind of bring a local sense of Hispanic community. I actually personally have been reached out by very senior leaders. I won't name them, but very senior leaders at IBM that have reached out to me personally to have a conversation on my experiences, my background, the Hispanic culture, my point of view, how we feel we're treated in the workplace as a learning opportunity for them, and actually shared that feedback with other leaders of the IBM organization. So I have to say, I think, you know, I feel supported at IBM, and not only do I feel it, I see it in my everyday interactions with the Hispanic Executive Councils and even leaders within my own department.
Thanks, Carolyn. Diego, would you like to go next? Yes.
You know, before coming to Nike, I worked at many companies, some great, some not so great. But because of those experiences, is that I can tell you that, I can honestly tell you that Nike is truly a special place. Nike is as big as it is, it has created an environment for people like me, for me especially, to feel comfortable being a Latino, to be proud to be a Latino, to bring my 100% self to work every day, to make noise, to create some waves and bring ideas and have conversations. So that channel goes beyond that communication. It also goes into the support that we're getting from leadership, all the way from the top, like my partners have said, all the way to our networks, our community. And I'll go a little deep on the support part, because I think it's important. For a company, it's very easy to celebrate, to throw a party to celebrate Latin Heritage Month and check that box and say, we did it, let's move on. But what Nike has done, it's different. It has created this open channel that allows us to have direct access to leadership, to community, to members and mentors that are there to help us and support us. You know, in a personal experience, I can tell you, that open channel has given me the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations and honest conversations with our CEO, to talk about issues that affect our community, to talk about issues that affect Nike as a whole, all the way to having a direct line with our Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, who I know we didn't say we didn't name, but I'll name him, Jarvis Sam, who has been a game changer since he got to Nike. You know, he has been a true partner, an ally, and whose commitment, love, and devotion to the community and to the work that we're trying to do, it's honest and valuable, and you cannot fake. So having a direct line to him, knowing that if I have an idea that I want to pitch, or if there's an issue that we need to address, that I have a direct line to him, that he's just a phone call or text away, because I do bother him a lot. It means the world, because it shows you that we are connected, that not only us, but leadership wants to be part of this change. And we're having those tough conversations, those difficult conversations that allow us to move on and to grow as a community and as a company. So it has been a way for me, especially, to understand and see and appreciate the work that Nike's putting into this. We're not just committing to showing it externally or through sport, we're committing to changing the world internally and working as a family. We are not perfect and we are not done, because I think those two words don't have a place in this type of conversations. But in sports terms, I'll tell you that this is a marathon. It takes a lot of work. It will take time. It takes a lot of commitment from all the parties, but we've made significant progress. And I am proud to say that I see this on a daily basis, from the communications we send out to the relationships that we have with leadership, with our VP, Latino VPs, with our CEO, and the ability that we have to connect. And then what's more important, at least for Nike, in my point of view, is that we're not treating this as a task, as a project, or something that a box that we need to check. It has turned into a way for us to embed this mentality, this thinking, and this diversity into everything that we do, from sport to communicating externally to consumers, all the way to how we communicate and how we develop people internally. We've created councils, we created development programs for communities and minorities. And I'm truly excited about the work that we're doing. We're trying to embed this into our daily life and work so that this becomes the fabric of everything that we build.
Wonderful. And I would also just like to bring kudos to both Nike and IBM. You know, I'm starting out my career. IBM has given me so many opportunities to lead within the Latino community. And, you know, in a company with over 300,000 employees, one could say, what is little old me going to do? But I've been given opportunities to do so. And to talk about Nike, I recently attended a Hispanic Promise workshop, and Nike's very committed to making change and working with not only their employees, but organizations and other companies so they could learn from each other, just as IBM is doing as well. So next question, now that we've talked about sort of what our companies are doing and our branding, let's talk about some actionable takeaways. I'm sure the folks online want to know, how do I bring this to life? How do I do it myself? And Gabby and Carolyn, I'm going to pass it to you. Sorry, not Gabby and Carolyn, Lauda and Carolyn, I'm going to pass it to you. Can you give us some key do's and don'ts about posting online and online platforms? Like, what do you do? What are some key things that you always resort to?
Sure. So I personally share, for example, on LinkedIn, I'm very cognizant of what I do share. And I enjoy, you know, sharing my social brand by sharing content and news that align to Latino leadership. When there's a major study or major research or a piece of news about where we stand as Latinos in corporate America, I love sharing that type of content, that leadership content about how we can elevate ourselves, how we can make ourselves better, where we stand currently in corporate America. And that helps build your digital persona, your personal brand on a professional social media platform. So I'm very cognizant of those type of sharing that type of content, interacting with those types of content, and also following other professionals who share similar points of views when it comes to that. I feel equally passionate about women in the workplace, women in leadership, and mothers in the workplace. So when I find content or organizations that advocate on behalf of those causes, I make sure to interact. In some instances, I've become, contributors to those platforms. So that's how I use social media in a professional sense. I would say when it comes to don'ts, I think we all know once you share something online, it's there for the world to see. So just be cognizant of who is your audience, and at the end of the day, I think, don't share anything on social media that you would be embarrassed, especially if your workplace found out about it. I tend to err on the side of caution in that regard. So if it's something that I would be embarrassed if, for example, my boss saw it or my company saw it, I just won't share it, It's more on the side of caution, but, it just avoids you tarnishing your social media presence, your personal brand. We've all seen how old tweets come back and haunt people. So I just don't ever want to be caught in anything related to that. And that's usually kind of what I use to guide what I do and don't share on online platforms, particularly when it comes to professional settings.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lauda. Carolyn, would you like to share?
Yeah, so just picking up on something that Lauda said, I do think of myself as, whenever I post something, I am representing IBM. So I do definitely keep that in mind. I do try to post content regularly and timely. So, I'll give you an example. I was in Mexico last week, had a wonderful visit. I'm trying to get that content posted today so that it's somewhat timely. I do take an opportunity to connect with others on LinkedIn. I definitely recommend that, that others do the same. It's a great way to expand your network. I said this earlier, it's a great way to connect with others that you might not have an ability to have interacted with otherwise if we didn't have these social media platform or these social platforms. I encourage everyone to keep content professional, but also casual and fun. I actually once was given feedback that I'm too intense. And I have to say that was my, corporate persona, because nothing is further from the truth. And, now that I do try and bring my authentic self, I try and keep the posts light and fun and casual. I find that's my personal style. So thinking about some of the don'ts, I would say don't overshare. You don't have to share your entire life on any of the social media platforms. Don't feel compelled to like every post. I mean, I read a lot of posts on a daily basis. I don't like them all. Remember that your reactions to posts are viewed by others. And then this don't kind of ties into my final don't. I stay away from politics on social media. I think that approach has served me well. I try not to, like or talk about politics on social media at all. So those are just a few things that are top of mind.
Absolutely. You don't want anything to get lost in translation. So thank you, Carolyn and Laura, for sharing those key do's and don'ts. Now, Diego and Gabby, I want to move into something that, Caroline was talking about being timely with your posts and sharing. What advice do you have to increase your engagement on your online network to the people? Caroline talked about being timely, but what other things do you think about when you're posting and what you're posting? Gabby, we can start with you.
Perfect. Well, first of all, I'm assuming most people who are tuning in are thinking about organic engagement. They are not thinking about paid engagement, which is something that I'm not against it, but I think most people are thinking about organic. The two platforms that provide right now the highest organic exposure and engagement are LinkedIn and TikTok. And I'm mentioning this because personal branding is personal branding. And if your career is music or design or in the creative arts, TikTok can also help you shape your personal branding. But most of the people probably are going to use LinkedIn, which is a wonderful tool. And that, as I mentioned, is one of the tools where we're not as mad at the algorithm in LinkedIn versus other platforms where you post and maybe, depending on how the algorithm is set up at that time, you might get or might not get as much exposure. So that's one. The second one, I think you have to really have clarity in your intent. So why are you creating this personal brand? And you have to do some soul searching and some strategic thinking and figure out, are you doing this because there's some service or product that you want to sell? Are you doing this because you want to network with people who are the decision makers that will take your career to the next step, or that will give you a job or a promotion that can take your career to the next step? Are you doing this because you want to position yourself as an authority in a certain subject, in a certain industry? Why are you doing this? And once you have clarity about why you're doing this, start thinking strategically. What is going to be the content? What is going to be the type of information? What is going to be the type of discussions that are going to serve that intent, that are going to serve that, that mission that you have? And I have a growth trifecta that I really like, and that is three things that I always keep in mind. One is content of value. So content of value, content of excellence. It doesn't matter, how much you want to reach out to people or in a network. If you're not providing something that is of value, it's not going to get you very far. The second one is consistency. Maybe you have something of value that you posted once a year. That's not going to generate traction. So content of value. The second one is your consistency. And the third one, which is sometimes the hardest for so many people who are already creating things of value and already doing it in a consistent way is visibility. Too many people are scared to put themselves out there, and to have that visibility and to create that valuable personal brand, you need to have the courage to be seen by others. So that's your growth trifecta: something of excellent, content of value, consistency, and be ready to show up and enjoy that visibility.
I love it. A roadmap for all of you listeners. I hope you're taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
Diego, can you follow up too with how you managed to get high engagement, or what are your key tactics to get engagement from your online platforms?
Well, thank you, Gabby. That was amazing. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I would say it lays on authenticity. Try to be authentic and understand the power of your voice and your brand. But also, it's important for us to understand that it is okay for us to be happy, to be sad, to feel vulnerable on social media, to overshare sometimes if that makes us happy, or to sometimes disconnect. We don't always have to be on. We don't always have to create, like I said earlier, this avatar, this persona that lives out there and that seems perfect on paper or on social channels. It's okay to disconnect a little bit, to understand what you can and what you should, or what your audience is looking for. On a personal note, I can tell you that what I discovered to be successful for me, and not on a business sense, but more on a personal level, was when I realized that in the early years of social media, we were all chasing trends and hashtags and try to get noticed and try to master that and sort of like one up each other. When there was a time that I said, you know what, I'm just gonna sag. I will just do my thing. I will focus on what makes me happy. And I started sharing work projects. I started sharing my runs with my dogs. I started sharing like me just trying to do crazy stuff, like learning how to DJ or do stuff like that, and put me out there, give me that visibility that Gabby was talking about. And that it took time for me to feel comfortable by saying it's not perfect, because as a creative, I want to package everything and have everything look beautiful and be perfect. Understanding that not everything has to be perfect, and that people will see the value in that was a huge unlock for me. Was what turned followers or likes into a community, into chats with people. Because a like or a check, it's one thing, but for somebody to reach out and tell you, I've been following you for a while, or like, I'm looking at you and that inspires me to apply to go work at Nike, or it's good to see a Latino representing or having a voice. It's important. It makes a difference. And that was the big unlock for me. I realized that I didn't have to create that persona. I didn't have to fit the mold, but I could just be myself, be funny, be sad, be mad about things that matter to me in the community, things that impact us as a community, and just be vocal about that with respect, with, knowing the limits and knowing the audience, and, just engaging. By far, I'm not an influencer or somebody that has millions of followers or things like that. But the very few followers that I have, the very few people, I consider them a community, because we connect. I try to make myself available. And that is one thing that people have told me, have seen the value in connecting with me. It's the fact that if they reach out, I can connect with them. If I have teenagers or creatives that are trying to come to Nike, or they're looking at that reach out and say, can you show more work? Can you show us what headquarters look like? Because my dream is to one day get there. Or to just reach out to thank you for speaking Spanish, for like putting a message in Spanish and having a voice and representing Latinos. It's important. So understanding that I didn't have to create that persona, and understanding that I could be authentic and be myself, and that I didn't have to create that I didn't have to create a business and a personal account, allow me to share that with people and tell them, you just be yourself. Of course, you have to cater it and you have to craft it, because it is your brand at the end of the day, but you don't necessarily have to have two personalities out there.
Absolutely. It's one for all and all for one here. We have to share everything about ourselves. And now I want to conclude with one question for the entire team. And then if there's some questions in the chat, we could probably get to a few of them. But what is something, so if I were, let's say, deeper into my career or even early on, what are some things that I should ask myself in terms of where do I start with building my brand? What platform, or what sort of branding mechanism, or what sort of things should I think of when going online and creating a profile? Like, what do I do? What is the first step to even consider and ask ourselves while building a personal brand? So we can start off with Carolyn, and then we'll move over to Laura, Diego, and Gabby.
So Diego and Gabby talked about this a little bit already, but what is your purpose for being on social media? What are you passionate about? What are the, things in your life or your career, or what you aspire to be in your career? What are your hobbies that define and fulfill you? And think about how much of that are you willing to share on a social media platform? How vulnerable are you willing to be? Think about packaging all of that and sharing your true self. And one point that Diego made that I really liked is that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Just whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, put it out there. But think about, like I said, I think it's important to think about your purpose and think about who you are, what your passions are, and then, put it out there and see how the world responds.
Thanks, Carolyn. Laura, would you mind following up?
I think similarly to what Diego said, being authentic. So think about, ask yourself, what are for me, what are my non-negotiable values? Like at the end of the day, what do I stand up for and what am I strong about? And I also think about what lights up my fire. Like, what is it that gets me up in the morning, pursue challenges, meet goals? Like, what is it? And use that to be my guiding light as I do my personal brand, but also my career. Use those values, that passion behind my fire to pursue opportunities, pursue new challenges, and have that be kind of your lighting guide as you navigate your career, navigate your next, your next path in life, and be open about that, like share that, in social media, with peers, with colleagues. Don't be shy about what is it that makes you happy, what kind of gets you up in the morning. And that eventually contributes, I believe, to your building your personal brand. That's what makes you who you are.
What makes you you, absolutely. Diego?
I think Lauren and Caroline already covered it all. I mean, being honest with ourselves and asking ourselves, what is it that we want? What do we want to put out there? And what do we want to get in return for that? Are we using this to build career, to create connections, to find that perfect job? Are we using our social brand to disconnect from work and just have fun and be out there and have your personal point of view heard? Who is our audience? Who do we want to reach out to? Do we want to reach out to corporations and headhunters and recruiters, or do we want to reach out to a community? Make sure that we create that impact around us. Those are questions that I think we should always ask ourselves, because that will answer, that will guide how you create your brand, how you put yourself out there, and the voice that you craft and how you develop that voice. We could use social media and our brand to find the perfect message, to leverage that to build our career in our future. But it could also work against us. If like I said earlier, if you create this fake persona, if you create this picture perfect LinkedIn profile that will get the hits, that will get the offers, that will get the attention, you might be doing a disservice to yourself, because you're just putting yourself in a situation where you might find the job, you might get the job, but you may not gel, you may not complement the team, or that team may not complement or fulfill what you as a human want. So again, puts you back in an uncomfortable position, and it was all created based on what the persona and the voice that you put out there. So it's important, unless you work on a silo project by yourself, you will have to work with a community, with a team. So it's important for you to be to understand that and to put that out there, to sort of like vision, so like manifest the type of environment that you want, the type of people you want to work with, because then eventually that will develop those relationships and those connections, because people that feel and think like you will reach out to you and see the value of that. And I know a question that was out there, for example, what do we do when corporate America does not align with that? Like, what can we do if how do we, how can we be ourselves at an interview or when we approach corporate America? And I would say it goes back to that honesty. It goes back to that honest questions to ourselves and thinking about, like, is this something that I truly want? Am I willing to commit or to leave that part of me outside of my work, my day-to-day work, because it just doesn't align with the company? Is that a company that I want to be part of or that I want to be in? So it's important for us to be honest with ourselves and understand that it takes commitment, it takes sacrifice, it takes honesty, and it takes that vision of saying there's more to work than just showing up and doing the job. It's community, it's teamwork, it's that personal fulfillment that you get from doing something that you're truly passionate and care about. And I think once we start answering those questions, and once we ask those questions ourselves, is that we'll be able to craft and understand what our path is and where we should be taking our brand.
Absolutely. And it sounds almost silly to think, like, why should I be asking myself these same questions every time I post? But I think it goes with the branding mechanism, right? Like, if you want to stay consistent, you want everyone to understand the same perspective you're trying to put out, then put out the same message, right? And I think Gabby does a really great job at this in her platforms. But Gabby, I'd love to finish off with your thoughts on what should we ask ourselves while building our personal brand.
One very important question that I ask myself, and I invite everyone tuning in to ask yourself, is how can I use my experience, my wins, and what I know to break barriers? That's a very important question that I ask myself, and it's happened to me at certain points in my career. For example, my book, The Virtuous Circle, was the first book published by HarperCollins Leadership Division. And when you're breaking those barriers, sometimes you meet with discussions that happen because you're the first to be there. For example, in my case, they never had a Latina author, and they never had a Latina author, much less with an accent. So the conversation was, who is going to narrate the audiobook? Who is going to narrate the audiobook? And I was very assertive, to be the narrator of my own audiobook, because leaders become in all shapes, sizes, and accents. And from that experience, what I learned is I'm starting to discuss more and more when I go to the big stages as a motivational speaker or leadership speaker, or when I do my corporate trainings, about accentism, which is the perception that certain accents are inferior to other ones. And every time I talk about it, there's always somebody who comes and tell me, oh, there's so much relief, because you know what, if it's a student, I don't go to present in the front of my class. And if it's a professional setting, people tell me they are self-aware. And I always think, what are the opportunities that are not coming our way when we are so self-conscious about something that is like our fingerprint, our accent, So those are some of the things that I incorporate and that I think about. And as we're wrapping up, that's why I want to ask everyone, like, how can I use my experience to break barriers? Because if you look around in media, in corporate, in government, we are so underrepresented. I mean, it's unbelievable. So what we need is an army of what I call pioneers. And pioneers are people who are gonna look around, see how everyone else like them is doing, and then instead of just emulating, they are going to open themselves up to the possibility of doing something no one like them has done before, because we have to take a leap of faith, step into the unknown, and all of us collectively, we have to dare to be first ones. The first ones in our family, the first ones in our schools, the first ones in our communities, the first ones in our companies, because guess what? Every time we take that leap of faith, every time we pioneer, we move the world forward. And that's what I want to leave you with. Grab that opportunity, embrace who you are, and pioneer.
Thanks so much, Gabby. Yeah, with all of that enthusiasm and thought and thought process behind your brand, we sometimes think, okay, well, I'm thinking this and I feel this way, but how do I know if, the people I'm engaging are understanding or they will accept, who I want to bring to the table. And I know we're running a little bit out of time, but in 30 seconds or less, I actually want to bring this to the team. We have a question in the chat that I think is going to apply to a lot of people. Someone asked, what do you do when corporate America expects you to be a certain way or fit their image? For example, when you're interviewing, you have to fit a certain role or respond a certain way. How can you truly be authentic and bring that to the table? And we can start with Laura. We'll move over to Gabby, Diego, and Carolyn. 30 seconds or less.
I think first, if you feel like maybe the organization doesn't want you to be authentic, it's a sign it's not the right organization for you. That's a red flag. But I think, just being open to speaking of your experiences with your supervisor, having that line of trust, with your colleagues, and also bringing your skill set to the table. It's kind of that happy package, I guess, that allows you to be your true self and execute on your work.
Thank you. Gabby, would you mind sharing as well?
Yes, well, I don't work in corporate America, I'm an entrepreneur, but what I would say first, as Laura said, make sure that you are aligning yourself in it. Sometimes we cannot choose, who's gonna, where we're going to work. You can move into that company maybe eventually, but I think, the fact that you are aligned with the values of that company, it's gonna make it easier. And for me, for example, in media, when I was working for a company or for a TV channel, I had to be very deliberate in showing that I was a multidimensional woman, because they put you in a box. You're either the sexy reporter or the robotic anchor who delivers the news with this tone of voice. So I think, presenting yourself in a way that it's authentic with who you are, and that it also shows that you are a multidimensional person. It might take more time to get the right fit, but you know what? We only have one life, and to be in where you work as you are, it's such an important component of happiness. It's worth fighting for it.
And Gabby, I want to touch on something you said as well. Gabby's not in corporate America. Not everyone is meant to be in corporate America. My parents are entrepreneurs themselves. That's the environment I grew up in. And this is something to keep in mind when you're looking at, your brand and what you value and what you want to do. What sort of things do you want to bring to the table into the world? And if that means you start it from the ground up, then fantastic. There are so many people out there who will be willing to help, just like the panelists on here today. Diego and Caroline, would you mind just closing us off with some tips for those who are expecting to, interview and feel like they have to fit into corporate America?
I would say, like I mentioned earlier, being honest with yourself and understanding and making that decision. Do I want to be part of that, or am I willing to sacrifice or leave that part of me outside? I can tell you, I've been spoiled because of where I work now, and from now on, if I ever have to look for any other company or other opportunities, this is a crucial part of my process. This is something that I value, that I respect, that I'm honored to be part of, and something that I continue to look for. And I ask people, and I challenge people, and I encourage people to look for that, to find that one thing outside of your daily work, because you have your highs and your lows always in any type of job. But this is what will always be the constant, that the passion, that fire, the fuel that energizes you to continue and to find fulfillment, even when work is getting tough or stressing or things like that. So I would say being honest, committing to what you truly want, what you want out of that experience, and understanding that this is the time. If there's ever been a time we're at a pivotal moment when things are changing, where companies are changing, where companies are evolving, when consumers are evolving, they're more knowledgeable and they know what to look for. And when employees have a little bit more of a power and control as to what they want out of their career, their life. And if not now, when?
Thank you so much. Caroline, some final thoughts?
Yeah, one thing that I've learned in my career is that building authentic and trusting relationships open doors. I mean, it's as simple as people want to work with people they like and trust. And if you're not bringing your authentic self every day and you're trying to fit some other mold, those doors aren't going to open for you, because you're not going to be able to build those authentic and trusting relationships that are so critical to corporate America, or really whatever you decide to do with your career. So I'll just close out with that thought. I mean, for me personally, once I started to bring my authentic self, doors started to open, and the decision makers started to take a chance on me and give me those stretch assignments and those stretch roles and maybe a stretch job. So I know that we've repeatedly said the word authentic and be your authentic self, but that really is what it comes down to, because you have to think about building those trusting relationships. That's really what's going to catapult your career. And, just to piggyback on what Gabby said, that's what's going to kind of help us get to the next level. That's going to help us break barriers, is if we are our true selves and we develop those authentic and trusting relationships. Absolutely.
Be your authentic self. Be willing for people to say no, because someone will say yes. And there's a community of people out there for you to reach out to, and use your online platforms to do so. Thank you to everyone joining us today. We have the socials of the panelists on the chat pinned up there, and we'll have it rolling through after we close out here. But thank you so much. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'd be happy to connect. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.